Paul Wiseman had always been a loner. No family, no wife, no kids. His life revolved around his work. When the opportunity arose to go deep undercover with one of the city's most dangerous gangs, he volunteered without hesitation. It was a mission unlike any other. Paul's task was to infiltrate the gang, learn their operations, and gather evidence that would lead to the arrest of its leaders. Initially, Paul's handler, Todd White, had high hopes for the operation. Paul had a knack for blending in. He quickly learned the gang's lingo, earned their trust, and even began participating in their criminal activities. For 5 long years, Paul lived the gang life. He committed robberies, extorted local businesses, and managed prostitutes. It was a role he played with chilling conviction. He reported his findings to Todd regularly, turning in detailed intel and any illegal money he earned. But as the years went by, things began to shift. At first, Paul followed protocol meticulously. He turned over every dime of dirty money he made, and his reports were comprehensive. But as he became more entrenched in the gang, the lines between his real self and his undercover persona began to blur. Paul started pocketing a little money here and there. It was small at first. A few $100s from a robbery, a cut from a protection racket, just enough to give him a sense of control in a world that often felt like it was spinning out of it. By year 4, those small amounts had grown into a substantial stash. Paul had quietly amassed a fortune, enough to change his life completely if he ever chose to. And then, one day, Paul disappeared. When Paul missed his first check-in, Todd assumed it was a simple delay. Undercover work could be unpredictable, but when weeks passed without a word, alarms began to sound. The department suspected the worst. Paul had been exposed as an undercover cop and eliminated by the gang. The investigation began with the gang. Officers stormed their hangouts and grilled the members about Paul. When the cops revealed Paul's true identity as a police officer, the gang members laughed in their faces. "Paul, a cop? You've got to be kidding," said one of the gang's lieutenants. Paul was from the neighborhood. He grew up with us. He wanted out of the life, so we blessed him out. That's it. We haven't seen him since, and if he's smart, he won't come back. The term "blessed out" referred to a rare and peaceful exit from gang life. It was highly unusual but not unheard of. The gang's story was plausible, but it left the police with no evidence, no suspects, and no leads. They kept the gang under surveillance, hoping for a slip-up, but nothing came of it. The next step was questioning Paul's only living relative, his estranged brother, Mike Wiseman. Mike hadn't seen or spoken to Paul in over 7 years, or so he claimed. "We're not close," Mike told the detectives. "Paul always did his own thing. Look, I'll help you any way I can, but I don't know where he is." What the detectives didn't know was that Mike was lying. He had played a crucial role in Paul's disappearance. Over the years, Paul had confided in his brother about the growing disillusionment he felt, not just with the gang, but with the police force itself. The deeper he went undercover, the more he saw the world in shades of gray. The gang members he once viewed as ruthless criminals were, in many cases, victims of circumstance. Born into poverty and neglected by the system, they turned to crime as a means of survival. Paul began to question the purpose of his mission. Arresting the gang wouldn't fix the systemic issues that had driven them to crime in the first place. It would only perpetuate the cycle. And the police force he worked for? It was no longer about protecting and serving. It was about busting and punishing. Paul had become a cog in a machine he no longer believed in. Mike helped Paul orchestrate his escape. Using the money he had squirreled away over the years, Paul purchased a new identity and a one-way ticket out of the country. He left behind everything: his badge, his old life, even his name. Today, Paul Wiseman is a ghost, somewhere far from the city where he once walked the thin line between cop and criminal. He lives a quiet, anonymous life. The police search for him has long gone cold, and the gang's suspicions have faded into indifference. Paul's disappearance remains an unsolved mystery, a cautionary tale whispered in the halls of the precinct and the dark corners of the gang's territory. But for Paul, it's a second chance, a chance to live life on his own terms, far from the chaos of the gang and the corruption of the force. And as he looks out over the horizon in his new home, he feels something he hasn't felt in years: peace.